This episode of the Adventure Series is brought to you by Cordova Coolers, a cooler innovation. Every year, the lure of Alaska calls to me from the north. And the time has come again for my crew and I to pack up our bags and fly to the last frontier. This fall, we're in search of moose, the legendary Alaska Yukon moose that this state is well known for. And this time, we've organized a big video project. I've invited Danny MacArthur and his son Garth, both from Alberta, Canada, to join us on this hunt. The plan is to have a videographer in camp with each of them to document their individual adventures as they pursue the largest of the North America moose subspecies.
This time I brought up my son Garth and been hunting with him quite a bit the last few years. We've gone on a goat hunt through Steve, and now we're up here on a moose hunt, and so it's pretty excited to be able to come with him and spend some quality hunting time. So that's what it's all about.
Are you scared of moose?
Well, I guess we'll see how close they come.
Because they're big.
Yeah, I guess if I run out of bullets, I might be kind of looking the other way.
We flew from our home in Northeast Oregon to Seattle, Washington, and then from Seattle to Anchorage, and our adventure really begins at Merrill Field.
That is good pizza, man.
Are you serving on the airplane?
Absolutely.
We're on our way out to Port Ellsworth. We're going to eat pizza, catching some nice turbulence, bouncing our way into beautiful Lake Clark. This is where we step from the known to the unknown, from the pavement to the woods. This is where we start to feel alive. This flight takes us over Anchorage, across the vast expanse of water known as the Cook Inlet, and then up the shoreline until we reach the entrance to Lake Clark Pass. This scenic flight takes you past glaciers that, now receded, used to cover the entire pass. The snow-covered peaks look cold and ominous, but from the comfort of the plane we enjoyed the spectacular view, and then all too soon we were over Lake Clark. The emerald green water and surrounding mountains remove any question as to why the people who live here love their home so dearly. And within minutes, we are touching down on the runway. The first leg of our journey from civilization into the wilderness of Alaska's backcountry, now complete. This is the first step in our hops into the backcountry. From here, the plains are going to get smaller and smaller. So we'll probably take a 206 from here to base camp. Then it's a Super Cub from there to Spike Camp. This is why we're going into the area that we're at, because it's so logistically impossible for most people to get there that they're never going to hunt that country. No hunting pressure means big bulls, lots of bears. Let's get remote.
I love that we have like 734 pounds of gear and 2 pizzas.
2 pizzas. 2 pizzas. Let me get this out of the way. It'll slide easier. Once we landed in Port Ellsworth, we found out that the weather at base camp was bad. Big winds had kept our outfitter from flying out to pick us up, so we offloaded all of our gear into his hangar and prepared to spend the night in town, which is fine with us. The weather was perfect, and we took this opportunity to relax and watch master fly fisherman Ian Majak work the shoreline for grayling, a nice break from his day job as field producer for the Adventure Series.
Oh, let's bring him in. Let's bring him in.
You got him!
Yeah!
Yeah!
Look at the size of that
Yeah!
grayling.
Got his face! Yeah!
Wow.
Red right
Look at the size of that
there. Yeah,
grayling.
keep them. We're gonna eat him for dinner.
As I watched Ian and our outfitter's sons land fish after fish, I was reminded by the boys of why I love this land and the people who live here so much. Their enthusiasm for life, to enjoy the land and to eat what you take from it. A simple grayling, and the statement, We're gonna eat him for dinner. One evening on that lakeshore cleansed my soul and refreshed my belief in mankind. With these kids, the future of our world is in good hands. The next morning, the outfitter's brother Leon taxied down the strip in his Super Cub. The plan was to take Ian in first, and then he and Jeremy would start shuttling people and all of the hunting gear and camera equipment into the backcountry. For years, Ian has always been the first man on the ground to start filming and documenting our arrival into some of the most amazing places on the planet.
This one's actually pretty luxurious and spacious. Look at all the shoulder room.
With Ian halfway to South Fork Camp, Jeremy arrived with the outgoing hunters who had just completed their brown bear hunts. We offloaded their gear and then loaded up field producer and sometimes aspiring bush pilot, Dan Thorstad.
Jeremy, you want front or back?
Good?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you wanted me just to hop up front or...
And as Ian was landing at South Fork, Dan was taking off, flying low across the Alaskan landscape, through the mountains, and into the backcountry. The river bottom airstrip is not one for a novice pilot to land on, and these pilots have been flying here their whole lives. Once on the ground, Dan unloaded his gear, and Jeremy and Leon took off together and headed back to Port Allsworth. From here, Jeremy will use his Cessna 206 to make a couple of trips. While his Super Cub is his workhorse, the 206 is his high-speed cargo van. It can take 2 people and all of their gear and make the flight in half the time. So with Danny and Garth and a load of equipment on the fast track to base camp, we were already 75% through the day's bush flights. This segment of the Adventure Series is sponsored by Burris Optics. Find what matters. We just heard Jeremy come in and land. He's going to take Raymond, my last camera operator, and Floyd Brown into South Fork Camp. And at the end of the day on the last flight, then I'll go in with my gear, but it'll be nice to get everybody out.
Well, we're about to take off, Floyd and I. We're gonna fly up to South Fork Camp and enjoy the beautiful ride. I've never flown in a plane this small. It's my second day of flying ever, so it's pretty exciting.
This was Raymond's first backcountry film project. He had worked with Ian for the last year to hone his camera skills and made his case to be included on this big project.
Wow, that's good. Welcome.
Pizza.
That's the delivery, pizza.
Your pizza?
Yeah.
So after Jeremy flew Raymond and our client Floyd Brown into South Fork, he returned for me. This time we would be flying back to South Fork in his Super Cub. The smaller plane would be needed for shuttling hunters and guides to their spike camps. And when the wheels touched down at South Fork, our journey into the backcountry was complete. You know,
How you do it, but you do it every time.
that might be the smoothest flight I've ever had in here.
Pretty nice, huh?
That was perfect. Well, I don't even know what to say.
That was about the most filmed landing I've seen in a long time. Everybody kept popping up out of the grass with the cameras.
We've been laying here for the last 5 hours.
Waiting.
Hey, I'm Steve.
Andrew.
Andrew, good to meet you.
Jordan.
Jordan, good to meet you.
Glenn.
Hey, good to meet you. Steve. Oh. We've been here before, and as I walk to the camp, I think back on the April brown bear hunt that we filmed here just 2 years earlier. The ice jams, the flooding, and the epic hunt for a big bear as he emerged from his den. Just being in this camp brings back memories. So we need to set up a target and shoot and get you guys dialed in here. For this trip, I brought 2 of my favorite rifles for Danny and Garth to hunt with. Both Bergara custom rifles, both chambered in .338 Winchester Magnum. One topped with the Burris Eliminator 3 laser scope, and the other topped with the Burris Veracity rifle scope, and both deadly accurate. I had brought enough ammunition for Danny and Garth to do some shooting and get to know the rifles that they'd be hunting with. And with Danny, I know that I have a hunter who can shoot. Just 3 years ago, he was with us in the Alaska range, hunting mountain grizzlies as they emerged from their dens. And when his opportunity arose, he made the shot count. I was banking on his son Garth to be cut from the same cloth, and from what I'd seen so far, he was. With enough time left in the day, Jeremy decided that he wanted to get Danny into his spike camp before dark. I would be pairing him up with field producer Ian Majak, who would be charged with the filming of Danny's hunt.
I'm thinking it's good to be reunited with Dan. I mean, he was, I think he was a client that was the second brown bear hunt, a grizzly bear hunt that I ever filmed. And here we are a couple years later doing it again, but just with moose, you know? So it's a pretty cool thing when you get to know a guy and get to experience stuff like this together. And then you're trusted to make the best show you can out of it, you know, document it in a way that shows it for what it is. Plus I'm flying with one of my favorite bush pilots in Alaska, Jeremy Davis. That guy's amazing. So the whole entire thing is just it's a full circle kind of deal to come back around and get another shot at it and come out here and enjoy Alaska. So.
All right, up like a herd of turtles.
So Jeremy flew guide Andrew, the camp equipment, then Ian, and finally Danny into the remote mountaintop spike camp where they would be staying for up to 11 nights in the Alaskan wilderness.
Good to be here now. Tomorrow morning we can start moose hunting. Good.
This segment of the Adventure Series is sponsored by Bergara Rifles. Our barrels make the difference.
Every morning there, we'd hear the rain on the tent, and then Andrew would come in and make us breakfast, and he always made a good breakfast, pancakes, and most mornings it was cool and a little bit rainy. Well, it's first morning, a little bit of rain outside, so nice hunting rain because it's not raining that much, just nice, keep the moose moving maybe. So we'll head out and see if we can find some moose this morning.
Yeah, we're gonna take off and hike here for about 20 minutes over
top of the hill here and do some glassing down in the creek down there.
In your experience, how do moose react to this sort of weather?
It doesn't seem to bother them. They kind of like the rain, I think. Yeah.
We just hiked about a half hour from camp or so down to the creek bottom down here. We see lots of moose working this area this time here in the rut, so we're kind of up on the side of the bank here so we can kind of see pretty good. And we're gonna try doing some calling and see if we can get one to respawn and come in.
While Danny was starting his hunt up in Spike Camp, Garth did a hunt out of South Fork with Jeremy, which was a big hike into some rutting grounds that have always produced big moose. And my client Floyd Brown was taken downriver by jet boat to a cabin camp on a beaver pond and dropped off with his guide Glenn, the snowman Trombley, the night before. All the pieces were getting into place when we got the call that Floyd had shot a big moose.
Well, we're gonna head down to get Floyd's moose. Kind of excited to see him. You know, the text message we got was that it's really, really big. I mean, it's raining, storms are kind of coming through today, so it's a great day to just go pack a moose out, see my client. It's always nice to see them successful. I got lots of days to hunt. The weather's supposed to start getting better tonight. Let's go, man.
Myself and a couple of packers loaded into the jet boat and headed downriver to help Glenn butcher the moose and get it to the jet boat for the trip back to South Fork to be hung up and cared for. And when we arrived at the cabin, I congratulated Floyd on his moose and had to hear the story.
Nice.
Yeah.
Floyd the Hammer Brown.
Floyd, these guys want to hear the story. How you whacked them.
Bang. Right here.
You shot from here?
Yeah. Well, not right here. We did go around the brush there where we could see. He's a lot bigger than what I thought.
That's what everybody says.
Every time we see a little bit more of him, he got a little bit bigger.
How many brow tines?
7 on one side and 6 on the other.
Shut up.
Yeah, it actually could be. It might be 8, but the points I got to measure it. They're
Width
not,
to height, like
Yeah, he's got points this high.
Yeah.
How wide do you think he is?
My guess is 63, maybe 65.
Oh, nice. Bull of the season.
Floyd and I were just getting stuff situated, and I was standing in the doorway like Floyd is looking out the window. Maybe it wasn't even 10 minutes after, maybe 15 minutes after Tate took off. And Floyd's looking inside. I look over Floyd's shoulder, and I see him standing right in the middle of the pond, right here. And I'm like, what? The first shot, you put him in the sight and hammered him. He was just about ready to step out of the water up onto the grass, right?
Yeah.
And I think maybe he had stepped up on the grass when you nailed him the first time. What do you think of that, partner? He's a
Yes,
monster,
sir.
isn't he?
Good Lord have mercy.
It's amazing what 30 yards will do. A little bit drier.
Wow.
I think we're going to have him extensions.
Yeah.
Moose meat is not an inconvenience for the people who live in Alaska. And Jeremy, his family, and the other families of Port Allsworth rely on the moose meat that Jeremy's hunters don't take with them to fill their freezers and feed their families each year. So a lot of effort is put into caring for each moose, removing every scrap of edible meat and getting it into the game bags. We used the canoe to move the quarters and trophy down the slough and to the jet boat. This was definitely the easiest pack out that we would ever have, And as we celebrated with Floyd, my 78-year-old client who had just shot a moose worthy of the all-time record book, I knew that this was going to be a great moose season. We had the proverbial first fish in the boat after just one day of hunting. And as we ran the jet boat back to camp loaded with Floyd's moose, I looked forward to the days ahead when the moose would start rutting, but I knew that between now and the end of the hunt, we would experience the highs and lows of hunting in Alaska. This segment of the Adventure Series is brought to you by Cordova Coolers, a cooler innovation.
Well, second day out. Rained all morning here, so we came out this afternoon. It's let up a little bit. Sitting beside the hill, see if we can see something moving and maybe do something about it. The walk wasn't too bad. A little shower, wind, but it's Alaska. My raincoat. Awesome.
You ever had a raincoat airdrop to you before?
No, it was the first. I hope there's a chocolate bar in there too. Thanks.
Yeah, man. Special delivery.
Danny is carrying both moose and brown bear tags. And while he and his guide Andrew glass the vast landscape, they're looking for both moose in the meadows and brown bears on the hillsides feeding on berries. But Alaska is not for the hunter who needs action every waking moment of the day, because the name of the game is patience. Hours upon hours are spent on the mountains glassing for animals. Bears and moose are not found in densities, and this is only September 12th. The moose rut has yet to begin, and the weather has only started to test Danny's will. A lot's starting to happen right now. We got blue sky as this weather system's starting to break up. The winds are laying down, so what they're going to do, they're going to take the 2 airplanes and fly Garth and his guide Jordan and our camera operator Raymond out to a spike camp. And they're going to be set up on where they've seen some moose from the air about a week ago. They're probably in the big valley below. They can glass a lot of country from up there. But this is when it really starts to break loose. It's going to get clear and cold tonight, and those moose are going to be rutting hard the next couple of days. So we got to get them out there here before the end of the day. This is what we've been waiting for. This is when it's going to happen. Peak of the rut, middle of September. Time is now.
Spike camps offer the opportunity to be able to be up on the hill and glassing it and then going down and calling morning and evening, so it keeps you more entertained.
This short break in the weather has allowed us to get Garth and his guide on his way to spike camp. These upper camp locations are traditional rutting grounds for moose as mid-September approaches and the rut begins. Jeremy and Leon are both skilled bush pilots, and they have been landing these planes on Alaska's mountaintops for years. And the Cubs allow us to access the most remote hunting areas where there are no lakes for float planes or gravel strips for lesser aircraft to land. After unloading all the gear, the planes depart, leaving Garth and his guide Jordan to carve out a spot in the bush and set up camp. Because of same-day airborne rules, Garth's hunt will begin the next day.
Andrew was a great guy, and he talked to you and got to know you and wanted to know who you were, and a hard worker. Like he never quit. He never stopped glassing. Like he would glass constantly.
Those few spruce trees there. There's another bull.
smaller moose about 40 minutes ago, and he's worked his way down below us here, and now there's another moose coming. Looks maybe a little bigger, but it's hard to tell yet. But he's almost on the same path the other guy was on, so maybe he'll come down here too and get a closer look and see what he is. He's almost walking the exact same path.
Sounds like he's tracking that other one.
Yeah. And this afternoon we see a couple bull moose. One of them is probably legal. Tomorrow morning we're gonna go across and see if we can do some calling and see what we can bring in.
With the second day of Danny's moose hunt in the books and Garth safely in camp, we all started looking forward to the days to come. The forecast was for clearer skies and colder temperatures. Perfect conditions for moose hunting. This segment of the Adventure Series is sponsored by Super Hides by Marathon Seat Covers. As the dawn rose on the 13th of September, it was clear and cold. Temperatures had dropped significantly overnight, so Jeremy and I ran the jet boat upriver to an area that he's always found moose. The plan was to tie up the boat and work our way through the rutting grounds, calling and moving until we found a receptive bull.
We just fired the boat up, ran about 8 miles upriver from camp. It's a big rutting area here that Jeremy likes to hunt. It's crisp, it's cool, we got the breeze in our favor. It's the perfect morning to hunt.
Jeremy is probably one of the best moose callers that I've ever been in the woods with, and he's been hunting this area for most of his adult life.
On the other side of this brush line is a big open meadow. Jeremy's telling me it's like a big rutting area. It works its way up to a spike-capped cabin they've got up here. We're gonna keep working our way up toward the cabin, get up here, do some calling, get a bull interested.
In the distance, we heard a grunt and started working our way in that direction. Stopping, calling, and moving up again. The bull didn't want to come in, a sign that the rut wasn't yet in full swing. So we worked our way upriver and checked out another cabin camp on another beaver pond before moving on. Again, working our way upriver, across more beaver dams, and calling throughout the rutting grounds, always with the wind in our favor. After our last setup produced no action or response, we called it a morning.
Jeremy hiked down to go grab the jet boat. It was a good morning hunt. We came through a lot of great country. We heard some moose back in the thickets, but it just wasn't to be this morning. Maybe the rut just hasn't kicked in. I'm sure we'll be back up here quite a bit over the next few days, but with 7 full days left to hunt, I'm not in a hurry. The best is yet to come.
Life in the spike camp is pretty cool, you know, like we would typically get up around 6 or so, or try to get up around 6 if you weren't too tired, and then walk in by 7, leaving spike camp and head out to a spot. Some mornings we'd just drop right down along the river and try calling until about noon or so, and then you come back, make the hunt successful.
After spotting 2 bulls work their way down the meadows below them the day before, Andrew's plan was to take Danny down to the valley floor, cross the river, and do a lot of calling in hopes of luring a big bull from the heavy cover of the timber.
We're across from where we were the other day. We seen a moose come through here yesterday afternoon, so we've seen his tracks just below us, about 50 feet, so hopefully there's another one around and we can get him to come in and have a look.
After hours of calling and waiting, Danny and Andrew head back across the river, through the thick alders, and climb the mountain back to camp. September 13th had come and gone without incident. This segment is sponsored by Caldwell Shooting Supplies. Innovation defined, accuracy anywhere. On their first setup of the morning, Andrew and Danny heard a cow bawling across the valley, and she was not alone. They could also hear a bull grunting, both from back in the timber. So they moved up and into better position. As so often happens with bulls that have found a hot cow, you can't call them away from the real thing. And as their calling faded into the distance and deeper into the timber, Danny hiked back to camp, wrapping up another hunt. And with the good moose activity, hopes were high heading into the next day. It's not uncommon that the long Alaska days, the bugs, the daily hikes up and down the mountains, and the harsh weather to eventually wear on a hunter. You can read it on their faces, but the tough ones persevere, and those are the hunters who find what they're looking for.
We just got up and started moving, and we hadn't gone 10 steps, and Andrew spotted this bull up on the hill on the other side of the river. So I said, well, there's a spot right there. So I went right there, and Andrew gave that moose a couple calls, and he was there right away.
This segment of the Adventure Series is sponsored by CVA Muzzleloaders. It's just a better gun. With the big bull moving off the hill and down the meadow, Andrew and Danny moved to get into position and let the big moose walk into view for a shot. But there is no time to lose. This bull is on a mission, and his long legs can have him out of sight and out of range in minutes.
I think I hit him both times. He's going down twice. He's going down. Awesome.
Oh. All of a sudden I looked over there and I seen the flash of the moose walking through there.
He's still moving a little bit there.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to drag that thing across the creek.
That's the least of our worries. We got the moose. Oh, he's a nice bull too. Man, that was exciting.
Fast, eh? Like
What
just
happened quick. Good shooting. Awesome.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. Let's go check them out.
Okay,
Yeah.
go over there. Get your waders on, Ian.
With the big bull down, the weight had been lifted. Danny's perseverance had paid off, so they made their way off the hillside, through the bog, and across the river, to the meadow where the big bull lay.
Pretty excited. Alaskan moose, they're pretty impressive animals. Standing and on the ground, they're impressive too. I mean, they're so big, and he was a good bull, and I was pretty excited when I was walking up to him and realized that there he was. Awesome, big. Look at that.
Pretty, man. Lots of points.
Yeah, big points, eh?
Yeah, yeah.
Andrew's been super all week. He's a tireless spotter. Never give up. He's always spotting. And it's tough when you're not seeing stuff to you kind of give up on that. But Andrew never gave up, and we kept at it, and we ended up here this morning. So it was good.
And you hunt hard, and you don't give up. And even though things were pretty slow, we did see a few bulls, early on, and then it got pretty warm, and nothing was happening. But every year, the last 3 or 4 days of the season are the best, and you just gotta remember that it can happen, and it's gonna happen sooner or later. You just keep calling and trying, and that's all you can do.
When we started walking, actually, I saw a spot. I thought, well, that's a good spot to sit, nice open. Cataloging it for later maybe, and then just 3 or 4 steps later, Andrew stops and we seen this bull, and he was, I knew where I wanted to sit, and worked out perfect. Didn't have much time to think. It was time to go.
It's a fact that the Alaska Yukon subspecies of moose are the largest of the moose family. Sometimes they come easy, as it had for Floyd Brown, but all too often they come through hard work. They admired the bull and prepared to start the job of butchering the massive animal. Andrew had already sent a message to South Fork that packers were needed, and when they showed up, the moose was packed to the hilltop, loaded on the Super Cub, and flown back to South Fork. Meanwhile, Garth and Jordan were covering some ground. Calling and moving, trying to locate a big moose of their own. And I was hunting the river bottom with Glenn.
Well, we're on day 3 of hunting here, and we went out this morning, did a little bit of glassing. Weren't able to see any moose, so we headed down, tried some calling. Nothing really came in, so came back up top here, did a little more glassing, seen one cow where we had been calling, so we watched it for a bit, and no bull showed up. Hopefully that changes, and hopefully our luck changes too, and we find some big bulls yet.
The moose rut was just getting started, and we all looked forward to the following day. This episode of the Adventure Series is brought to you by Cordova Coolers, a cooler innovation.
If you'd like to book your own guided big game hunting adventure, give my office a call. I will personally take your calls, answer your questions, and help you book the hunting or fishing trip of a lifetime.
With Danny tagged out and staying up in his camp with Andrew to look for a brown bear, we flew Ian Majak back to South Fork to recharge camera batteries and join Dan in filming my moose hunt.
Nice coat.
Hey, thanks. What's up, man?
How'd it turn out?
Oh, I scored on a great moose. Yeah.
But before we could fly to our own spike camp for the last 4 days of the season, word came in that Garth and Jordan hadn't been seeing enough action to warrant staying in their spike camp any longer. So the decision was made to move them over to that camp. Big moose are a cause for celebration. And when I see the Super Cub flying low past the cabins with a massive rack strapped on the struts, I know that one of my clients was successful, and that any day could be my day. I had known all along that the last 3 to 4 days of this hunt would be the best. The week leading up to them was just a warm-up. And that with every day, more moose would move into the meadows and river bottoms to rut. Alaska's seasons end before the moose rut really has a chance to get going. But it's close enough to the peak of the rut that you can call these moose in. In the days to come, we will call those big bulls to within close range. We will run jet boats up and down the rivers. We will try to end this moose season the right way. Will Garth get a shot at a massive bull moose? Or will I get a chance to drop the hammer on my CVA muzzleloader? The only way you'll find out is by watching next week's exciting episode of the Adventure Series.